thank you all for being here. I'm going to just hold on to this thing. My name is Rachel Budde. Thank you so much for having me, Carrie. I really appreciate the invite. And this is the first time I've taught at an event like this. Usually I'm teaching at herbal conferences because I'm an herbalist. But yeah, just a little intro about myself. I am a clinical herbalist in the Western tradition. I'm also trained in the somatic psychotherapy, Hakomi. I'm also trained as a psychedelic guide. I'm currently getting my master's degree in herbal medicine at the Maryland Institute of Health and of Integrative Health. And my teachers, I have to shout out my teachers. The ethnobotanist Kathleen Harrison is one of my teachers, Vlasta Mlekar. She's a Slovene ethnobotanist. I'm Slovenian. This is my heritage, so I'll be speaking and kind of framing what I'll be sharing with that in mind. And also Aviva Ram, Joshua Muscat, William Morris. These are my teachers. And then just gratitude to my Slovenian family. Firstly, my grandmother, Ivanka, Evie, Mojca, Urushka, and the ancestors that speak through me. They are why I'm here today, why you're all here today, right? And then, of course, gratitude to the plants. They are the reason that I am standing in front of you and the reason you're standing in front of me as well today. So with that in mind, I just wanted to take a moment to kind of drop in and invite you all, if it feels comfortable for you, to close your eyes and just, arrive as you are. Lots happening. We're in a beautiful, wild, powerful place. But you also might be having your laundry list of things to do in your mind, so just come as you are. And now just take a moment to consider what you had for breakfast today. And that might have been food, it might have been coffee, tea, and just consider the plants that you imbibed this morning, right? The thing that you wake up to take in, coffee, right? A powerful coffee, caffeine to start the day. And just call to mind all of the food that you've ever eaten in your entire life. And then the food that your ancestors ate and the drinks that they drank. All the food plants that are the reason that you are here in this moment today. And just to take a moment to acknowledge those food plants and maybe send them gratitude. Now, just shift your thinking to the clothing that you're wearing today, right? It's keeping you comfortable, stylish, right? Maybe it's made of cotton. Maybe it's made of rayon, wool. So even if the fiber is from an animal or the food was from an animal, all those animals had to eat plants in order to bring you their food and their bodies, their fiber. And think of all of the clothing that you have in your closet at home, all the clothing that has been in your closets your whole life, the clothing that your ancestors wore, right? Made of flax, cotton. And just to take a moment to send acknowledgement and gratitude to those fiber plants and their bounty. Now again, we can take a moment to shift our thinking to the homes that we live in and the furniture in our homes, considering the materials that we build our lives with. Trees, right? Mostly trees. paper, chairs, tables, cabinets. And consider the protective quality, the solidity of your home, these objects in your home, how they protect you, shelter you. Consider all of the plants, all the trees that sheltered your ancestors. And again, just taking this moment to acknowledge these trees, these plants, these shelter plants, sending them gratitude. Now again, let's shift our thinking to our medicine cabinets, right? Even if you've never drank a cup of herbal tea, but you probably have. All of the medicines that you have taken in your life, many of them are derived from plants. Definitely the medicine that your ancestors were taking were mostly plants. So again, just taking a moment to acknowledge these medicine plants and sending them gratitude. Now let's shift our minds to the fuel that we use, right? The petrochemicals, ancient plant matter, the fuel that our ancestors used and we made fire pits from, right? Trees, plants, coal. Without these plants, we would not be able to fuel our lives, our expansion, our warmth. So again, even though our relationship with some of these fuels are complicated, we can take a moment to acknowledge the plants that they've come from, send our gratitude. And just take a couple deep breaths. Right? The oxygen that we take in. Another gift of the plants. So as we breathe in, we can take in the gift, and as we exhale, we can offer a gift back to the plants in this cycle. All of the air that you've ever breathed, all of the air that your ancestors breathed, all came from plants, the exhalation of plants. So again, taking one more moment to send gratitude to the plants. If it weren't for them, we would not be here. And when you're feeling ready, you can open your eyes and come on back. Oh, I gotta get my tech underway here. There we go. This always keeps me on my toes. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about botanical allies for liminal exploration. And I'm going to really go all over the place. I want to talk about the body. I'm going to get a little sciencey because I think it's really important for us to contextualize herbal medicine, to really understand what's happening in our bodies, because it's brilliant and amazing and we should teach it in school. And I hope that you'll leave with a sense of reconnection to just the natural ways of your body that are happening constantly without even you thinking about it. And also just the world of plants that are all around us all the time, that you'll feel that much more of a sense of belonging. So herbal medicine is part of all of our ancestry. This is a really important concept that I think a lot of people don't remember, right? We think, herbal medicine is this thing that, healers do. And actually healers were part of every single one of our families. Often they still are in other parts of the world, especially the mamas, right? The grandmothers. They're taking care of their families. It's practical. Every one of our lineages was deeply affected by healing plants. And that's on the physical level, that's on the cultural level, and the spirit level. And this topic of plants and liminality really is, it's my intention that it's a reminder that it can connect us all to these aspects, from the body to the beyond. So as we relate, we resonate, we remember that we are part of a much larger and brilliant and infinitely interconnected web of life. And we can draw on that web of life for strength and create new generative ways of being. So I just want to say too, many of these images that I'll be using are from my Slovenian heritage. And it's really a way for me to honor my own plant relationships in my family and my heritage, but also as an invitation for all of you to connect with yours, because again, we all have deep, beautiful rituals of plant connection in our ancestry. So I like to define my terms. So we're going to start. What is liminal? So Victor Turner was a cultural anthropologist, and he expanded on Arnold van Gemp's concept of liminality. And that refers to a threshold state between two stages of being. So Turner describes liminality as a powerful, ambiguous, transformative space where individuals are betwixt and between, I love that term, social identities, roles, or structures. And so this is a photo of a healing ritual. The Baba, which were often the healers in the family and continue to be so. So this is a lot of words, but I want to give, again, a little bit more information to the power of the liminal space. So Turner really describes the liminal state is when we temporarily step outside of the structure of society, right? So that gives us an opportunity to be in this anti-structure place. So this is where we break out of the social norms. The communitas in liminal states, people may experience communitas, that intense feeling of social togetherness and equality that arises outside of formal hierarchies. Super important, right? Super important for us to break out of that status quo that keeps us feeling separate from each other. This often happens in psychedelic spaces. Transformation and rebirth, the ability in liminal states to be symbolically unmade and then remade. This is fertile ground for personal and cultural transformation, right? Ritual and performance. Ritual and symbolic acts in liminal phases are not just decorative, but essential in guiding and containing this volatile and creative energy, which is in all of us. So Turner extended liminality beyond traditional rites. So they're not just, in the past what ancient people did. They're really part of our lives today. So that's in theater and social movements. Anytime that we're kind of breaking out of this status quo, we are in liminal spaces, and we're going to be talking about how plants can really assist in that process. So why is the liminal important? It's really about making the invisible visible. And so much of what is happening here today is this interest in what is just beyond our awareness, what is hidden from us, either because we can't see it or because it's being kept from us, right? So really making that visible. So the liminal contains creative power of the unconscious. And this is where those insights and ideas, they naturally arise from this place. And when these kinds of entities or ideas or patterns are in unconscious spaces, we actually act from them, but we don't recognize that that's what's going on. So the really important part of making the invisible visible is so we can proceed with awareness. This is really key from healing from trauma, right? And destructive patterns, and for our evolution as a species. And for making magic. And magic for me is really about seeing connections between seemingly disparate things. So with catastrophe really all around us, we need to assess our creative potential for problem solving. Again, to see beyond our separateness and embrace the reality of our interconnectedness. And this is so important now more than ever. So we need to dream to create new paradigms. So how do we access the liminal? So aside from this kind of cultural ritual, right, dreaming, the creative process, the state of liminality is actually a physiological one. And that's something that I'm very excited to kind of talk about in relationship to the plants. So the liminal within. So like I mentioned at the beginning, understanding the functions of our bodies to support the liminal within is critical. Again, it kind of offers us a window into these processes that are happening without our recognition constantly, that are real miracles. And when we are able to drop into them, we can attune with our vibration. We can attune with the brilliance of our bodies and honestly, the brilliance of the natural world. And once we do that, we can come into better alignment. So as within, so without. The nervous system. So the nervous system gets kind of referenced a lot, but it's not often truly deeply understood. So I'm just going to give a high level of the nervous system. So we have the central nervous system, and that's the brain and the spinal cord. We have the peripheral nervous system, and that's the nerves. We have the somatic nervous system. So that's the nerves that connect to the skeletal tissues. And the enteric nervous system. So that is the nerves that connect to our GI tract. And then the autonomic nervous system. So that's the nerves that connect to smooth and cardiac muscles and endocrine glands. And the autonomic nervous system is called autonomic as in automatic. This is what we don't have any conscious awareness of, but is really the core of our operating system. So we're going to go more deeply into the autonomic nervous system. In every single class, I teach classes on herbal medicine for skincare, for dreaming, for yoni care, for everything. I always talk about this because it's so fundamental to our health. I have an herbal body care business, and it's really just a front to talk about the autonomic nervous system, honestly. So like I mentioned, the autonomic nervous system is the automatic part of our nervous system, and it has two branches. This is the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is more famous. So that is the kind of fight or flight, right? And that is the part of our nervous system that speeds things up. It gets things going. And then the other side, the complementary side of the autonomic nervous system is the parasympathetic nervous system. And that slows things down. That is the rest, the digest, and the reproduce. And the autonomic nervous system really determines where resources go in our bodies based on the stress that we perceive. We only have so much blood in our bodies. So this gets just very economical, actually. So we only have so much blood in our bodies. Blood contains red blood cells and then the white blood cells. So that's basically oxygen immunity. So if we only have so much blood, we need a system to be able to say, these are the systems that are going to be the most important for the blood to go to. And these systems, they can get a little bit later on down the line. So that is the brilliance of the autonomic nervous system. So we can see here from this slide kind of what happens on the physiological level in terms of what the parasympathetic nervous system kind of oversees in the sympathetic nervous system. So you can see to the left, we have the rest and digest. So we have our pupils constrict, our heartbeat slows down, our airways constrict. They are able to be relaxed even though there's constriction. We can digest our food. We can, so both in terms of the stomach and the gallbladder, we have the intestinal activity, and we can pee at our leisure. What this slide doesn't also show too is we can feel sexy, we can feel sensual, we can feel enjoyment, relaxation, right? The sympathetic nervous system, on the other hand, dilates the pupils, increases the heart rate, relaxes the airwaves, which basically lets us take in more oxygen. So if you think about when you get nervous, right, you start to breathe, you start to like take in a lot of oxygen, your heart starts pounding, right? Because your body's getting ready to run from something. It feels threatened. And then it shuts down your digestive system because that's just like not important right now. I'm trying to get away from this tiger. And you need to pee, right? Because your body's just trying to let go. So you are ready to face a threat. So many times people come to herbalists for seemingly disparate issues. So they're having trouble sleeping, they're having digestive issues, they're having menstrual issues, et cetera, et cetera. And those are all treated in these silos in conventional medicine. But always it comes back to a dysregulation between the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So once you treat the balance, and I'm going to be going to this a little bit more, these issues resolve because it's really, it's about where blood is going in the body. So just to say too, the autonomic nervous system is instant. So it is perceiving threat instantaneously. So actually before you can even recognize a threat, right? Like a ball is being thrown at you, you are flinching away from that before you're even conceptually aware of that ball coming towards you. So this is instantaneous. Judith was just talking before about this sort of quantum sense of time, and I really believe the nervous system is quantum. There is an instantaneous understanding of what is happening in the environment and the body before our conscious recognition. So that's going to be an important piece, and just the timing. So related, but sort of secondary, is the HPA axis. So within the brain, the hypothalamus is the monitor and switchboard of the endocrine system. And a part of that critical feedback loop is called the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. The HPA axis core job is to sense stressors, physical, emotional, environmental, and coordinate the body's endocrine response to keep you alive, balanced, and adaptable. The HPA axis basically turns the external perception of the environment in terms of threat and creates the sort of chemical endocrine loop to be able to mirror that. So that's the HPA axis is a bit slower. So that's a couple minutes behind if a stress happens. The autonomic nervous system is on it, and then the HPA axis kicks in to help us be ready for whatever threat is in our environment. So the HPA axis is our hormonal stress thermostat. So this is regulating how our bodies react to the world. So it is this sort of homeostasis that the HPA axis is constantly monitoring. But really thinking about, it's not homeostasis, it's actually allostasis. So allostasis is much more active. So that when we have a healthy HPA axis, we can be nimble. We can actually go with the flow. It's changeable. Homeostasis is stagnant. So we want to be flexible. We want our HPA axis to be flexible and fluid. So this is huge to our perception. So in order for us so the brain is very economical. So it takes an enormous amount of our energy, our metabolism, to make new pathways in our brains. So oftentimes what happens is if we are conditioned over time to perceive certain threats because we live in a stressful environment, we have trauma, our HPA axis becomes wired. It becomes wired to kind of perceive a threat so we can react accordingly without taking up too much metabolism to power a new way of thinking. So in order to conserve energy, our bodies create chemical pathways which wire our perceptions and our reactions and our responses. So is it a reaction? Is it a response? So in other words, our perception is chemical. This is really important because we have agency when our perception is chemical, biochemical. So as humans, we are naturally seekers of pattern and meaning. This helps us make sense of our world and our place in it. Our ability to make meaning is also a chemical process and one we can influence. Another piece to this puzzle, the gut. The gut, it's one of my favorite places to talk about. So, of course, the gut includes the digestive organs. which you can see in this picture here. And that is from your mouth all the way to your anus. That is your GI tract. In addition is our microbiome, which is billions of our ancient relatives. So consider the microbial environment has been passed on through generation, and not only through humans, but also the environments that our ancestors lived in. So, and I feel that these beings, they come with their own wisdom. Each of them have their own imprint, and they are informing us. So as humans and as animals, our internal microbiome is really our soil. So I like to always think about how we're like the plants, and the plants have their roots in the soil, and we carry the soil in our bodies. So like plants, we need a diverse soil in order to grow healthfully. So the other beautiful thing about the gut is it's the most ancient part of us. So billions of years ago, like our first ancestors were literally like a tube. So it was just like eating the world and pooping it out, eating the world and pooping it out. And that's how I was learning about its environment, was basically by taking something in, processing it, and pooping it out. And we're basically doing that same thing here today. So that system is ancient and has its own, as I mentioned before, as part of the central nervous system, the enteric nervous system, sometimes called the second brain or the first, right? And we often experience this on a physical level. We associate a deep knowing with feelings in our guts. And then embedded in the gut walls are 500 million neurons. So we actually make more neurotransmitters in our gut than we do in our brains. So, of course, everything is connected. And there is a triangular conversation between the HPA axis, the autonomic nervous system, and the gut. And this conversation, whether we are stressed or balanced, shapes our digestion, mood, and resilience. And this gut health can directly influence stress resilience. We all kind of know this, right? When a stressful event happens in our lives, what happens? Our digestive system gets thrown, right? And then we can't sleep. And then we're having trouble processing just the stress in our lives. So all of these are very much connected and often in conventional medicine treated very separately. So stress management can improve digestion and nutrient absorption, and promoting good digestion and nutrient absorption can really help with stress management, right? So it's circular. And so we have a lot of entry points. So functionally and metaphorically, our gut is the place for digestion, absorption, transformation, and letting go. And I really think about the gut as the liminal space. So when we tend our guts, we tend our consciousness. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about that further on down. So accessing the liminal with plants. So we are chemical and alchemical beings. Chemistry is how our body communicates with itself, right? This is just like a nurse's slide of like all of the hormones that are going on. This is like a study. I've taken many physiology classes, and it's a lot. We are very alchemical beings where if one of these little pieces gets thrown, the cascade of effects is pretty unfathomable. And we understand some things, but actually there's so much to the body and how our body is actually communicating with itself through these pathways, through these biochemical pathways that we are just scratching the surface on. And herbal medicine is exceptionally complex in this way. More on that later. So plants are really partners in our biology. So plants are energetic, ecosystemic mediators, harmonizers, and protectors. And that's not just with our bodies, right? This is in the environment. This is with insects, with other animals, with other plants, with geological formations. And plants offer phytochemical support to our physiology. And when I say phytochemical, that's plant chemistry. And this is a photo of another Baba holding chamomile. Chamomile is one of the primary plants in the Slovenian Materia Medica. So medicinal properties of the plant are found in their secondary plant compounds. And these secondary plant compounds are used, this is very basic, for defense and communication. So if you think about a plant, plants have evolved for billions of years. And what do they do? They stay in one place. So their behavior and how they're communicating with the environment is chemical. So they seem like they're restricted by just staying in one place, but actually they are very brilliant in the way that they move, and it is through this chemistry that they have. And we borrow these secondary compounds in herbal medicine. The primary plant compounds are for its basic growth, right? Its ability to photosynthesize and grow and all that. So the secondary plant compounds, and just to give context too, a pharmaceutical is one chemical compound. So plants have hundreds, if not thousands, of chemical compounds. Interspecies connection is liminal. So plants and their chemistry have always been in conversation with us and with countless other species, as I mentioned. Many animals, including chimpanzees, as pictured here, use plants for medicine with remarkable accuracy. So I just want to go into this a little bit because it's so, it just paints a picture and is so beautiful. So chimpanzees know dozens of medicinal plants, and they, have been observed using medicinal plants with amazing accuracy. Scientists have said, well, it's because they evolved with these plants for, millions of years. But actually, chimpanzees know the medicinal properties of plants that were brought over during colonialization. So they have an ability to understand the biochemistry of a plant in order to help themselves. So not only are they able to use plants for medicine when they have certain parasites, but they have also been observed to do something pretty remarkable. So if a chimpanzee has a particular parasite, it will go up to a stand of plants of the same plant, and it will put a leaf in its mouth of one plant, go to the next plant, put a leaf in its mouth, and do that to all of the different plants in that stand. After it's done that, it'll make a selection. It'll go to one of those plants and take that plant and take it in. So what's happening there, right? To think about, our origins when we're kids, we're babies, right? We put things in our mouths. We put things in our mouths to understand it. So really thinking about there's some kind of communication happening there that we also have. We have this ability. Our five senses have gotten us here today, right? Our ancient relatives had to use our senses. And just, what Judith was saying before, this isn't extra. This is innate. It's really just a matter of tuning into the senses that we were born with. And so part of this liminal exploration is, yes, being able to kind of dream and think big, but it's also really dropping into to our innate wisdom. And that's really in touch, in our sense of smell. I was just burning Artemisia tridentata when you first came in, really thinking about the way that through scent we tap into deep memory. So it's right here. It's right here in our bodies. And also the accuracy, I just want to speak to this too. So sometimes there's a certain parasite that gets stuck to the intestinal walls of chimpanzees. So what they'll do is they'll go up to a plant that has a Velcro-like texture, and they'll take the plant and they'll fold it up and they'll swallow it whole. So they actually understand that when this plant, this Velcro-like plant, is going through their digestive tract and they poop it out, those parasites are gone. Like, that is tremendous, right? Amazing. And also dogs. There's so many different animals that use plants as medicine. The phytochemical blueprint of being.
Yeah, it's still like
Absolutely. Dogs exposed to medicinal plants, they know what to do. Many animals, even in captivity, there's been also studies of orangutans that have been bred in captivity, but medicinal plants are put in their enclosures and they know how to use them. And not only do they know how to use them, but they'll pass that information on to other orangutans. Also bears grown crown. It's kind of like that. Bears raised in captivity. There's a plant that grows out here, actually, osha. Bears have been using osha for basically arthritis, for pain in their joints. They've been observed to do that in the wild. And bears, there was a bear that was, again, raised in captivity. Osha was planted in their enclosure, and this bear had some arthritic joints, came up to the root, pulled it out of the ground, chewed it up, put it right on its joints. So there's this wisdom that is interspecies, right? It's connecting us to our environment. So the range of plant chemistry offered protective benefits to our earliest bodies and brains. So I was talking about that tube, right? Our ancient ancestors. And to think about this coevolution, again, plants have been around for billions, millions of years. And so we've really evolved alongside them, but they are the dominant species. They make up 80% of the biomass. So they know what they're doing. So these compounds that are in plants, these secondary plant compounds, provided a chemical blueprint for much of our physiology, and that's shaping our stress responses, our immunity, cognition, and more. So that slide that I showed before of the chemistry of our bodies and our physiology, the blueprint for that is in plants. So some ethnopharmacologists propose that it was through the ingestion of diverse plant species that humans came into consciousness. So this flute right here, this is from Slovenia. It's the oldest flute found in the world 50,000 years ago in a cave in Sirkno. So just to think about, again, in all of these Neolithic sites and Neanderthal sites, there was medicinal plants that were part of those digs, and they were used in burial, that were both seen for ritual use and taken as medicine. I'll be speaking about that in a little bit. So other ethnopharmacologists suggest that psychoactive plants became the foundation of spirituality and religion, the beginning of myth, ritual, and cosmology. So I'm just going to go over a couple of these power plants. So opium poppy. Here's a couple examples of the Minoan poppy goddess. Quite old, and this figure. There's many figures, and you can see on the top of her crown right there, the opium poppy. And then we have the Greek goddess Demeter with opium poppy as one of her emblematic plants. And also the Greek god Hypnos associated with opium poppy. So opium poppy was one of the plants found in Neolithic settlements in Europe in 6000 BCE, and is also mentioned in the Sumerian cuneiform texts, which is 3000 BCE, as the joy plant. And again, this is suggesting a long and rich use. And opium poppies was used for pain and dreamlike states. And it's associated with many gods and goddesses and energies. So that's from fertility gods to kind of the joyful to the hypnotic. And opium from the opium poppy was used as a medicine and a sacred substance. And then we have the psilocybin mushroom, and then the fly agaric mushroom, the Amanita muscaria. So this figure to the left is a Neolithic petroglyph in current day Algeria. And there's many examples of this kind of figure, this shamanistic mushroom figure that appears all over the world, actually. So in the middle here, we have this standing figure holding a mushroom. So this is from Mexico, and I'm trained in work with mushrooms, with sacred mushrooms from Huautla, Mexico. So there's a long tradition of sacred healing rituals in Oaxaca in Mexico, and a long history of sacred uses of ayahuasca and peyote, also in the Americas and in South America. And then in the West and in Europe, there's the fly agaric mushroom. And this is, we still see, it's hilarious to me when I go to the suburbs in Wisconsin. And I go and I see on people's, front lawns, it's like the little garden gnomes and the Amanita muscaria. I'm like, wow, it's so hilarious to me. But great, because there's something so powerful about these symbols, right? They represent the liminal, the magical, the sense of possibility. And then we have the Aztec god, the seven flower god. He was also god of hallucinatory plants, including mushrooms. Pentitecutli, the Aztec god of healing and psychoactive plants. These mushrooms are associated with gods. They're associated with healing ritual, community healing ritual, divinatory drinks like soma that go back into ancient texts from all over the world. So the power of these mushrooms in considering the basis of our spirituality and cosmology as humans can't be overstated.
Here it's not
Yes.
Here.
Yes. Yeah, I keep track of those things. But it's still very much on the fringe, and we're going to be kind of touching into that a little bit in just a moment here. And then we have henbane. Henbane is one of the witchier of the plants, right, that have been used again for sacred ritual and associated with many powerful goddesses. So the Greek goddess Hecate is associated with henbane, and Hecate is also the kind of goddess of owls and the dark and the medicinal plants that are also have kind of a dark side, but that need to go into the dark places is really fundamental to our wholeness, right? To understanding the darkness helps us understand the light. And then the Greek goddess Circe, who was also associated with henbane and as a healer. And both Hecate and Circe were also worshipped by the witches, right? They were really sort of the goddesses, the deities that oversaw this wisdom, this healing wisdom and this plant wisdom that was held by women and priestesses. And then, of course, we have Bacchus, right? Dionysus, who's also associated with henbane. And there were so many of these drinks. The brilliance of our ancestors to really understand dose and to be able to mix drinks that would take them to states of being where they could commune with spirits, with ancestors. Much of that has been lost, went deep underground. And the henbane was also associated with a lot of sort of witches' brews and witch flight. And there are ideas that henbane was infused into salves that was used topically. And so that's where we have the kind of like witch's broom sort of idea that these salves would be applied on the broom and then they would be inserted vaginally or anally to produce this feeling of flight. And black henbane, actually, henbane still has pharmacological use. So scopolamine comes from henbane. It is in medicinal doses antispasmodic. It's hypnotic. It's a urinary bladder relaxant. So it has still much medicinal use. And again, it's about dose, right? The difference between poison and medicine is dose. So another term for these plants and fungi is entheogen, and this means the God within. So the entheogens provide a direct experience with the sacred. So this direct experience of the divine, of the liminal, if you can imagine, is quite threatening to institutionalized religion, right? And that might have been a start, right? These experiences of these divine experiences are really the underpinnings for our current day religion and spirituality. But when institution starts to come in, it starts, if you have a direct experience, that can't be controlled, right? So shamanic traditions of ayahuasca, peyote, sacred mushrooms, as you were saying, continue to this day, but remain at the fringes. This is not, it's starting to be accepted-ish in contemporary culture, but not embraced. And there have been many violent efforts from, anything from the witch trials to the Inquisition, were attempts to disconnect people with these plants and their sacred origins. And those efforts were very successful. Many 60,000 people in the witch hunts were killed. Many of them women who had sacred knowledge that was passed on through generation. The Inquisition killed many, many people and suppressed these ancient traditions and sacred rites. So, of course, with any power, right, there's always the dark side. So the dark side of power plants.
Yeah.
So our consumption of plants both connects us with the god and the demon within. So these are a couple images here of deforestation of the rainforest in Honduras for coffee cultivation, the opium wars between Britain and China, and, of course, enslaved Africans cultivating tobacco, which was the economic backbone of the United States. These cannot be, again, overstated, the power of these plants that moved peoples, that killed many people, enslaved many people. It was really about plants and their chemistry and our desire for them and the commodification of them, right? So when imperial powers were violently stamping out plant ritual and spiritual practice, they were profiting from these power plants. Coffee, tea, tobacco, coca, poppy were all considered sacred medicines until they became commodities that changed the world. So cultivation and global trade for these power plants are behind slavery, as I mentioned, tobacco, coffee, sugar farming, and the rise and fall of governments, the British and the China during the Opium Wars. And then, currently and also historically, epidemics of addiction. So this is also why I think it's really important for us to consciously consider our consumption of plants, the effect that they have on us, and really to consider who's growing who. And our relationship to plants, especially in modern cultures, also is often considered sort of separate or passive, when actually it's the most important thing that we do. Like we might feel distance from plants and where our food comes from, where medicine comes from, but it is the most important thing in our lives, right? Food, medicine, shelter, our ability to breathe oxygen. Biodiversity is a state of mind. Okay, I'm going to rewind the tape a little bit. So our ancestors ate between 100 to 200 plant species regularly. And today, if you are lucky, the average diet contains about 10 to 15 plants. So just do a little inventory, a mental inventory of what's in your fridge right now. How many plants are in there? Maybe if you have a bang and spice drawer. I hope you do. So this narrowing of the diet doesn't just limit our nutrition, it narrows our access to the spectrum of chemistry that we evolved with. Also, the earth contains about 10,000 edible plant species. So this reduced chemical contact with plant diversity might be a hidden driver of our sense of disconnection and literally the narrowing of our minds. So I think about herbal medicine as helping open channels of flow. So when people come to me for herbal practice, for a formula, I really feel like it's like their channels between their chemical channels within their body are narrow or kind of rigid or crispy, or there's different ways that I visualize it when people come to me. And the plants really come in and they activate, they enliven, they help us remember this sort of innate chemical wisdom that we have. So, remembering with plants. And this is a beautiful process. So, as I said before, and I'll say it again because I think it's really important, herbal medicine is part of all of our ancestry. And when we ingest plants our ancestors consumed, we awaken a cellular imprint. We open a portal through time. And this is actually one of the ways I connect with my ancestors is I eat the food that they ate. So one of the things that is still eaten today in Slovenia is dandelion greens. So dandelion greens at the beginning of the springtime, vregrat in Slovene. It's a very bitter, very delicious green. And when I take that in, I feel like I have better access to where I've come from. I feel like I can speak to the plants with more clarity. I feel like I can connect with my lineage more clearly. So this is something that that we can all do. And really thinking about plants as sort of ways to connect through time and space. Botanicals are literally in our bones. They are woven into our evolutionary and cultural story. So through relating with plants as foods, teas, medicines, we are continually exploring altered states of being. So you know how you feel after you eat certain foods? That's a state of mind. So this, the idea of altered states, we think of psychedelic mushrooms or peyote or something, but it's like actually, that hamburger is also altering your state of mind, or that kale salad is altering your state of mind. So having a sense of that, I think especially when we have issues, when we have health issues, we're very attuned to that, right? And in that way, that kind of wound is a blessing because we're able to really see the impact of the things that we take into our bodies. Plant allyship reroots us in our environment, both spiritually and chemically. So I just want to say too, my path as an herbalist, I grew up with herbal medicine. My family is Slovenian, and it's just an ambient part of the culture. But as I grew up, I was an artist. I still am an artist. And I got really interested in mythology. That was kind of the backbone of my artistic practice. And I was getting my master's degree in New York City and was really inspired by mythologies and folklore. And then one day I asked myself, like, well, what is mythology even about? And it's really about how people orient themselves in the places that they live, right? It's what is their relationship to the geological formations, to the weather patterns, to the animals, to the plants. And I was living in New York City and had no connection to any of that. And so I started to get really curious about the plants that were growing around me. And those plants were weeds. So I would go and I would visit stands of mugwort and burdock and dandelion. And at that time, I was also taking a permaculture class. And I heard an idea that changed my life forever. That the weeds that grow in urban landscapes have a direct correlation with the illnesses that people suffer from in those same landscapes. And to me, that just felt like, whoa, I'm in the middle of New York City, concrete jungle, and I am in nature. And there is a call and response in the environment. And it's not that the weeds are there for people. They're there to come into a denuded and degraded environment, to provide medicine to the soil, to provide shelter for insects, right? To pave the way for other plant species to come in. They are the healers, and they're the tricksters too, because if you ever tried to kill a dandelion or amaranth or burdock, they're bitches. They don't want to die, and they will come back even stronger. And they laugh at us because they're also medicine. They're the medicine that we need. So this was a remembrance of that relationship that we have with the plants around us. That we are speaking to them, and they are speaking to us. Whether or not we can hear it is the question. Healing is liminal. Healing is a liminal process. just as I said, actually, the relationship between the medicine and the wound is one that continues to inspire me. Oftentimes it is when we have an illness or we have an injury that we awaken to some deeper part of us, to some deeper wisdom. And what we do with that, right? What we do with our wounds really paves the ways of our lives. So there's a way that process is really to be honored. So healing means reworking, knitting up, and reconnecting what has been fragmented. So botanicals can really help us mediate dysregulation, help us rewire that HPA axis, as I talked about before, and nourish new neural pathways. Herbal medicine can cultivate and stabilize the mindset we want and what our world needs urgently, right? So especially with the stress that we are under and the trauma of not only our lives, but the lives of our near ancestors, many of us have been kind of wired to be sympathetic nervous system dominant, right? We react to our environment. We have less access to our creative potential. So that's both in the sense that we are just trying to survive, right? We feel threatened by many things around us, but also we're eating a lot less plants. So we have just this much of our potential, right, unlocked to us. And in order for us to thrive again, in order for us to come back into interconnection, we need more access to our creative potential, to that parasympathetic place that is open and rich and deep and full of possibilities, full of healing. This is my cousin Evie, and this is a jar of mushrooms that her and her husband Tone hand harvested and dried. And she holds it back for these 30 species of mushrooms for soups. And she'll only give it to folks who are strong, because if some folks who have weak constitutions eat that 30 species of mushrooms, they're not going to feel so good. Act like a plant. So I wanted to pass this around. So this is the Dreamweaver mist. This is one of the mists that my company makes. And you can just spritz yourself. So it's mugwort, California poppy, and lavender. And we're going to be getting into some of these plants. But this formula was developed to assist in the liminal. So that can be in dream time, it can be in journaling. And the plants that are primary in that formula, mugwort we're going to be talking about, really opens us up to the liminal space, and that can be kind of frightening. So California poppy is in there as a sort of mediator. So California poppy has traditionally been used as a nervine, so it's and we're going to be talking about that. Very soothing to the nervous system, but also used by traditional people in California for nightmares. So it really takes the edge off of kind of nightmares and fear states. And lavender is one of those plants that is often taken for granted. They're like, oh, it's just in your granny's underwear drawer. But let me tell you, you want to pay attention to what's in your granny's underwear drawer. That's where all the wisdom is. So lavender soothes, it calms, right? But the way in which it does that is it basically dissolves duality. It creates space. Lavender creates space. And that is the space that we want to access when we want to touch into the creative, into the liminal. So that is what's in the Dreamweaver mist as you're getting passed around right now. Act like a plant. Viriditas. Viriditas literally means greenness or growth. And the mystic Hildegard, she's one of my icons, viewed Viriditas as the divine force, the greening power of God present in all things. So that is the life force that we tap into when we work with the plants. And she really saw this as the connection between the divine and the physical world. So that desire for life that is beyond, one plant, one person, that just kind of keeps things going. That is the Viriditas. So this is really a concept that emphasizes our connection, emphasizes the interconnectedness of the individual, the earth, and the divine. So again, as I said before, plants are the most successful life form, accounting for 80% of Earth's biomass. And that's the second most successful life form, if you can put it like that, is bacteria. And we still have much to learn from these sun eaters. Thinking about all of the amazing ways that plants have figured out how to live on this planet is unbelievable. And the burgeoning, the science of plant intelligence, I would absolutely encourage everyone to check that out, because plants, they should be our inspiration. The technology of plants continues to be able to be in harmony with this planet and to eat sun, right? That is the constant source of energy. And, we've started to do that as humans. We've started to learn biomimetically, how we can survive on this planet and thrive, not just survive, but thrive on this planet. But there's so much more for us to learn from plants. Okay, now we're going to get into some herbal medicine. So hang in there with me. Plant actions that support the liminal. Again, this is like a little bit technical, but these ideas are things that you can take with you in your lives, and they have practical purpose. So again, herbal medicine is part of all of our ancestry. So all of the herbalists that are in your lineage, I'm calling them forward. And I'm sure that you already have resonance with this idea because you're here right now. So we're going to talk about adaptogens. So I live in California, and adaptogens are like the cool new thing. But often people are like, "Oh yeah, that's just what like my Instagram shaman told me to take." But oftentimes we don't really understand what they are. And as an herbalist, I really feel like I am a matchmaker. So there are many different kinds of adaptogens, but not every adaptogen is good for every person. So really, it's about setting people up. I hope this is an invitation for you to get to know the adaptogen that might be your match. So adaptogens are non-directional, non-toxic plants, and they are regulating and tonifying and assist the body's ability to deal with stress, from physical and emotional stress, through that repatterning of the HPA axis. So I really like to think about adaptogens as the therapists of the herb world. So like you go to your therapist, right? And you're like, okay, I have this problem. I keep reacting in the same way and I'm getting, the same results. Like, how do I break out of this? And as I mentioned before, this hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis is basically external stressor kicks in a chemical response. And so that can become very habitual, right? That is the chemical mirror of the sort of dysfunctional patterns in our lives. And like a good therapist, over time, adaptogens say, okay, here's that external stressor. Let's take a minute. Let's just pause here. Is this the way that you want to respond? Is there a better way to respond to the stressor? And so that is what the adaptogen is doing. Over time, it is strengthening our resilience to the external stressor. It is helping us repattern our response so we can proceed with the way that we want to proceed rather than the reaction that's just coming from that kind of unconscious place. So this takes a little bit of time. And a lot of the most robust studies done on adaptogens were conducted by Russian scientists and in their attempts to maximize the abilities of their athletes and hard laborers. So there's lots of science behind adaptogens if you are interested. Some of it is a little disturbing, but still based in like a very Russian approach to science. So here's a few examples of adaptogens. We have our American ginseng, which is really good at kind of cooling an overactive stress response and helping us kind of tap into a deeper well of energy. Ashwagandha is very calming. It's probably the most calming of the adaptogens. We have reishi mushroom, which is so powerful. This particular mushroom is good for so many different things and so many different people. But one of the indications for reishi for me when I see clients is A fear of mortality is an indication. Then we have rhodiola. Rhodiola is really good for people who are burnt out. Burnt out and kind of that tired and wired rhodiola really helps us kind of find new energy, and is especially good for menopausal women. Actually, I love rhodiola for menopausal women. And then we have the nervines, and these are the plants that have a direct effect on the nervous system. And as I said before, right, that the nervous system is the fastest one to react to what's happening in our environment. So the nervines, even though it sounds like it should be relaxing to the nervous systems, are also stimulants. They're stimulants and relaxants. The way I think about nervines is that they are the best friends of the herb world. So you have a bad day, your boss was an asshole, you call your friend, and they make you feel better right away. And they're like, yeah, that guy is an asshole. And you're like, thank you, I needed that. So those are the nervines. They make you feel good right in that moment. And so here are some examples of nervines. So we have the coffee and the tobacco. Those can be stimulating. Sometimes the tobacco stimulating and calming. That's why it's such a powerful plant. So addictive, right? We have oat. Oat is really amazing for the nervous system in that kind of like jittery way, like when nerves have just been like, I'm just thinking about like a super busy mom who's also has a full-time job and she's got like screaming twins. That is like an oat person. Linden, lipa. This is the sort of axis mundi, the tree in Slovenian tradition, often the center of villages, and where all the important decisions are made is around the linden tree. Really good, soothing for the heart. This plant is used for so many different things: colds, flus, pretty much everything. So tilia, amazing plant for folks who need a sense of connection to soothe them. That is a good indication for linden. Hawthorn is associated with the heart. So really strengthening for the heart, the physiological functioning of the heart, but also for those who've dealt with grief and heartbreak. And then we have bitters. This is the most ancient flavor. So bitter plants support our GI tract, our microbiome, our liver health, which helps us to absorb nutrients, rid the body of toxins, and balance hormones. Bitters are super important. If we think about our ancient ancestors, they were mostly eating bitter plants. It was only through cultivation and cooking, right? Fire pounding, that we got the bitter out of our foods. So there is an ancient wisdom to the bitters, and really herbal medicine is the introduction of bitters back into our diets at the right dose. And as you take in more plants, initially they all just taste bitter, but there is this whole plethora of palate that wakes up when you start to take herbal medicine and you start to taste different flavors within bitter. And I am a total glutton. I love food. I love flavors. And I feel like bitters, they really offer me like an expansion to my palate. So I would very much recommend getting some bitters in your life. So here are a couple examples of bitters. We have artichoke leaf, very easy to grow, motherwort, gentian, the king of bitters, and vervain. And all of these, again, if you tasted them side by side, they are all super bitter, but they have their own flavor, and that is their own phytochemical profile. Oneirogens. So oneirogens are plants that support the dream state, lucid dreaming and remembering dreams and having prophetic dreams. So the oneirogens are very, very liminal plants. So here are some examples of oneirogen plants. We have Kalea, the dream herb, mugwort that was in the spray that I passed around, pelin in Slovenian, and that's the Artemisia species, and that is related to the Artemisia tridentata that I burned at the beginning of this lecture. And then we have dream root, the African dream root. Beautiful. They look dreamy, don't they? When you just look at the flowers. Nootropics. So nootropics enhance cognition and memory, and they facilitate learning. They are the sages of the herb world, pun absolutely intended. So when we are in this process of reweaving our HPA axis, right, when we are chemically trying to help ourselves respond rather than react to our environments, nootropics are critical. They are critical in us rebuilding the neural connections in our brains. So after I work with clients who are in psychedelic spaces, that is the time and place where those kind of pathways are just blown open. Literally, our minds are blown. They are totally expanded, and we see different ways of being. We see like, oh my gosh, I can let this grudge go. Oh my gosh, I should reach out to this person, right? And it's like these epiphanies that come one after the other. Those are fragile. Those are new pathways. Thinking about, being on a trail, you stay on the well-worn path because it's easy, it's predictable. To go off that beaten track takes more energy. You might need a machete to cut through. And so those new pathways, they're fragile. They need support. The nootropics help that process. They really help rebuild those new pathways, strengthen those new pathways. They're like metabolic casts on the new ways of being. So these are sage. So there's so much wisdom in the culinary herbs. So think about the herbs that you already have in your spice drawer, right? We have sage, we have rosemary, marjoram, cinnamon, ginger, coriander, cardamom. All of these plants are ancient, and their uses are ancient, and they are all medicine plants. So here we have sage, we have rosemary, we have gutta-cola. Let me catch up with my notes here. And so rosemary is amazing. If you're trying to break the addiction to coffee in the morning, the two plants that I would say to put together to create kind of stimulating, but not sort of stimulating to the point of jitteriness brew would be rosemary, and then you just squeeze a grapefruit in there, and that will help kind of get your cortisol stabilized and give you kind of that deeper energy. So rosemary boosts alertness and recall. Sage preserves the acetylcholine for clear memory. So really important for there's been amazing studies on actually the aromatherapeutic benefits of rosemary and sage. So literally just smelling rosemary and sage can be really helpful for folks who are dealing with dementia. So amazing studies on that. And gutta-cola nourishes brain structure and connectivity. So it's kind of that physical part of our neurochemistry that gutta-cola really supports. And then, of course, I can't not talk about the plant spirits. So plants are beings. They have spirits, which is a part of their medicine. So the way that I like to think about this is like a dating profile. When you're creating your dating profile, you say where you work, what your hobbies are, what books you want people to think that you read, right, et cetera. And that can really look good on paper. But then when you actually meet someone, is it there or not? And that is the spirit of the plant. You can learn all of its constituents. You can learn its indication, its actions, all of that, how it grows, what it likes to grow next to, etc. But to stand in front of a plant and to relate with it, to introduce yourself, to touch it, to smell it, to taste it is a whole different experience. And that's when you make those true connections with plants. So these are some of the plants in my Slovenian tradition that are used for their magical purposes and their spirits. So St. John's wort, Hypericum perforatum, this plant is really indicated for bringing light into the dark. So if there is, on a physiological level, St. John's wort topically is used for burns, for wounds, taken internally can be really good for certain kinds of depression when there is a rupture in your life that is really hard to recover from and is taking you into dark places. It is really the bringer of the light. So St. John's wort is associated with the sun, with the solar radiance. So is used for protection. So at the summer solstice, St. John's wort is collected and woven into wreaths, put on the doors, put around livestock as protection. It's associated with the sun and the solar deity Kresnik. Then we have rose. So rose, we think of as, it's, for Valentine's Day. And yes, it has that sensual aspect, of course. It's beautiful blossom. It's amazing aroma. But if you think about it, you get your roses and you grow them and they're beautiful. And then that time comes where that blossom fades, right? And what do you get? The thorns. And but if you hang out long enough, where that blossom was becomes this bud, and that's the rosehip, which is one of the most nutrient-dense sources of vitamin C in the plant world. So the rose really represents that kind of fullness of love. So it is the good times, it's the sexy times, it's the hard times. But then again, that cycle of that nutrients that comes with love is embodied in the rose. Juniper, Brin, is a cleansing plant. It's a purifying plant. So it's used in food. It's used as sort of like a cleaning solution, and it's used for clarity and cleansing, purification, getting stuff out. Mistletoe is really interesting. Mistletoe is used to trap basically the evil eye, the kind of bad energies. So mistletoe is often hung in the home, and it is a sort of energetic. It's a magnet for energetic entities that are not so savory. So if you have somebody come into your home, for instance, who has got a bad vibe, as soon as they leave, you pull that mistletoe down and you throw that mistletoe into the wild. So really good for kind of trapping of negative forces. And then I just want to introduce a few plant allies, and then I think I'm going to be done and ready for questions. Mugwort, we talked a little bit about mugwort, and it's in the Dreamweaver mist that I sent around. So mugwort is considered a bitter and an onerogen. So the bitter constituents you can taste in your mouth. That starts to get, as I mentioned before, your mouth is your first digestive organ. So when you take in mugwort, it starts to get the digestive juices flowing, starts to send the signal to the rest of your body like, okay, there's food coming down the hatch. And that the process of digestion is not just chemical, it's also about timing. So you want bitters help with both aspects. And the onerogen really promoting that lucid dreaming. So mugwort has been all over the world where artemisias grow. The artemisias are associated with lucid dreaming and prophetic dreaming, and bringing kind of a conscious awareness into the liminal spaces. You can make teas. They're very bitter, but you can also get tinctures and just drop dose a couple tinctures. When you take a bitter, you only need a couple drops. You just need to taste the bitter for it to be effective. Also indicated for menstrual regulation, stimulating for digestion, and again, opening into that liminal realm and having lucidity in liminal realms. Vervain. So vervain is also one of those sacred herbs to the ancients, dedicated to both Jupiter and Venus. So there's so much, this is not for this class, but there's so much connection between the planets and the plants and the humors. So it's kind of like as above, so below. So this bitter is also a very clarifying herb. So clears kind of digestive hepatic congestion as well as energetic congestion. And it's really used for purification. But vervain is indicated for me for folks who are really hard on themselves. It's kind of like that stagnation that comes when you're just like this shit's already happening, and then you're taking it really personally and you're not letting yourself kind of the grace to be able to move on. That is a certain kind of energetic stagnation that vervain is really excellent for in moving that. So also magically used for entering into liminal realms with like a clear question to gain insight about something specific and learning. And then we have tobacco. So nervine stimulant, sacred plant, and everywhere tobacco is native to, it is a sacred plant, and cannot overstate this. So a sacred plant of communication, relationship building, expansion. Even now, when you think about, so tobacco is really a plant that is used for communication between realms. So communicating with ancestors, communicating with other beings, communicating with other people, and stepping out of kind of regular time and space to be able to do so. So even thinking about now when people take a cigarette break, such a perfect example. You step out, you're working at your job, you're like, okay, I'm gonna take a cigarette break. You go outside, you're in a different time and space. The people who are also smoking cigarettes, you are in your own kind of time and space. And you are relating in a different way over a cigarette. So the curanderas of Huautla in Mexico, my teacher Kat shares this, that when two curanderas meet on the path, it's kind of like two cats coming at each other, like, oh, what's going to happen, And they sit down and they share a cigarette. And it is this sort of bridge building with tobacco. Now, remember what I said before, tobacco was also the impetus behind mass enslavement of peoples, right? Massive greed and colonialization and displacement of many, many peoples, addiction, right? So this, you don't want to fuck with this plant. There is a lot of respect and awareness that must come with relating with tobacco. Just to paint a little bit more of that picture. There's a desert tobacco that has a relationship with a moth that's very interesting. So this tobacco is pollinated by this moth in particular. And so it opens, its flowers. It invites the moth in. Come on in, friend. So the moth comes, pollinates the plant, and lays its eggs on the tobacco. The eggs hatch naturally and are hungry. So the caterpillars start to munch on tobacco, and the chemistry of the desert tobacco starts to change. And what starts to happen is it starts to excrete more nicotine and other alkaloids that slow the caterpillar down. Literally, you see the caterpillars kind of get lethargic. And it also sends a signal, a chemical signal, to the predators of caterpillars to come and basically predate on the caterpillar. And so there's this amazing chemical behavior of tobacco that really, again, paints a picture of the Solanaceae, tomatoes, eggplant, right? Daturas. We have these Solanaceae plants that are sticky. They literally, their leaves are sticky, and we want to relate with them. I mean, tomato, there's nothing better than a tomato. But, we also need to be proceeding with caution and respect. So whether you are a dreamer, a journaler, a psychedelic seeker, or a muggle, to have conscious access and awareness of the liminal states will benefit you in a deeper connection with yourself and the world around you. So I hope this class has given you some inspiration to see plants as powerful allies and as friends to be made. And so thank you. Thank you. And I would just love to take any of your questions and comments. And if there's any takeaways, like, are you inspired to go home and make yourself a vervain tincture or make yourself something? We'd love to hear. What's that?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So, well, you live in Colorado, right? So you have Artemisia tridentata growing wild around you. Artemisia. You can harvest this plant and make a bundle that you can sniff before you go to bed at night. That's a good way to work with this plant. But Artemisia also grows, mugwort grows everywhere. It's actually one of the plants that mugwort.
You said viruses again.
Yes. Artemisia is the Artemisia. So we have Artemisia tridentata, this one, and then Artemisia vulgaris, Artemisia douglasiana. These are all in that family that are helpful in promoting lucid dreaming. Yeah.
I have one question.
Yes.
Well, at one point we have free purslane all over the property. I think it's here. And what does purslane do? Do you know what that benefit is?
Super nutrient rich, actually, and it has this mucilage. So have you tried it, a little bit of it?
We've had it so last year. I haven't found any this year yet, but it's around.
Okay, yeah. So really good for that kind of gut soothing. So anything with that mucilage is really soothing internally as well as externally. And so if you have like a sunburn or something like that, you can also grind up the purslane and put it on topically. Very soothing, but very nutrient rich, hydrating plant. Yeah.
Yes, it's very good too. It's sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, my question is, how is the gut related to energy outside of the physical dimension? So how does the outside energy also impact the gut that's out there?
There's so many different ways to consider that. So I think that if we're thinking about our guts as the house of all of these ancient beings, they have a resonance with the environment. So oftentimes the bacteria or the protozoa or the virus or whatever it is that's in our gut that's been in there for many generations came from somewhere. So that environment and the bacteria that live in that environment and then the bacteria that live in our guts, there's always going to be this connection. It is sort of an entry point and helps us kind of orient in our environments. So there's a deep knowing of the many, many species within our bodies that are more than we are. You know, we are this much and the bacteria is this much in terms of our composition. So this knowing is sort of like we're coming along for the ride. So if really that trusting of our gut to get us oriented is basically helping us tap into a wisdom that is beyond our wisdom. Does that help to answer your question?
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Anyone else? Any takeaways?
What did you inspire some of your experience?
Which ones? I have a lot of experiences.
What did it say about?
Maybe what I'll do is answer other questions and then maybe I can go into that because I've been talking for a while about myself. So do you have a question?
I have a question. Thank you so much for coming. So ragweed grows in agricultural areas a lot. Is it
Ambrosia.
A response to ambrosia?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a response to, talk about it, please?
So there are many different ways that environments have been degraded, right? So even if we think about ragweed and the allergic response of humans, right, that is a sort of protective response of the environment for humans to become allergic to the plant that's dominating a denuded and degraded environment. So, ironically, actually, you can make tinctures of ragweed for allergies. So this is not always the case, but there's so much poetry in herbal medicine and homeopathic medicine. So thinking about like treating like is resonant in ambrosia, but really thinking about, like, for instance, poison oak and poison ivy. These plants and the urushiol, the part of the plant that causes us to have reactions to those plants that are very uncomfortable, are just getting stronger as the climate warms. These parts of plants are protective. So I think that's just an aspect that we can just see as a signal that, like, maybe we just need to leave this area alone. So that's what I would say about that. Yeah, sure. Any other questions?
Could
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. So if, let's say you harvested a root and you have a tincture and it's marinated and whatnot, how long is the shelf life of an adaptogen, or does it vary?
Yes.
Yeah. Ashwagandha.
It depends if you grow it yourself. It depends if it's tinctured fresh or dry. It depends on the quality. So that's the thing. It's kind of depends. But maybe we can talk after if you have a specific question about a specific patch. Did you grow it yourself? Oh, that's great. Well, I can fill you in a little bit more afterwards to really, get it dialed, the dialed answer. And ashwagandha is good for some, but not for everyone.
Right. yeah, so we can talk maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions, thoughts? Who's inspired to relate with the plant? Yeah, yay. Okay, that's all that matters. My work here is done. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this. And thank you for your attention. It's the most valuable thing. Thank you.